There's nothing that has such an emotional spectrum where we can feel everything that you have felt in your entire life and then things that you haven't even like fathomed to experience.
The only reason I'm here is because of other people and mentors. It's interesting to see how far the ripple goes. Triple clarinets!
That was going on.
Hi, my name is Tamara Dworitz, and welcome to Martinis with Maestros. Today we have with us Nina Young and Jennifer Koh. Nina Young is a composer and sound artist based in New York City, and her unique musical voice draws from elements of the classical canon, modernism, spectralism, American experimentalism, minimalism, electronic music, and popular idioms. And her works have been performed by the American Composers Orchestra, the Minnesota Orchestra, New York Philharmonic, Philadelphia Orchestra, and many others. She serves as the co-artistic director of Ensemble Échappé. Nina is currently the assistant professor of composition at the University of Southern California. Cheers! So most importantly, what are you drinking?
So I chose not to drink a martini because I'm self-quarantining, and so I've limited my alcohol consumption because I was just like a little bit worried what that might look like. So I am drinking a white Bordeaux.
Ooh.
You can see, oops, $19. Yep. I really like white Burgundies and white Bordeaux's, and I am going to be making some pizza later. I made a pizza crust last night, and I figured this is what I'm going to be drinking, so it's my aperitif, and then in good New York style, I'm also downing this with a can of seltzer water.
Jennifer Koh is a violinist dedicated to exploring a broad repertoire. She is a champion of new music and has expanded the repertoire of contemporary violin music through a wide range of commissioning projects. She has premiered more than 70 works written especially for her. She made her debut with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra at age 11 and was a top prize winner at Moscow's International Tchaikovsky Competition. She is also a recipient of the Avery Fisher Career Grant. Some of her recent and upcoming engagements include with the following orchestras: the Pittsburgh Symphony, the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, the National Symphony, the LA Philharmonic, St. Louis Symphony, Detroit Symphony, Philadelphia Orchestra, New York Philharmonic, Houston Symphony, and Nashville Symphony, just to name a few. Jennifer, you started playing the violin at a really young age, and could you tell us about that and when you decided to actually continue and pursue the violin as a career?
So I started pretty early, Suzuki, and my parents were refugees during the Korean War, when they were children, so I think they just started me in everything that they never had, never could have had. So that included everything from violin lessons to swim team to diving to ice skating to rhythmic gymnastics to gymnastics. There's got to be another activity in there, but ballet, of course. I was most drawn to, I think, music, and I was really into swim team. But it was really my first violin teacher who pressed my parents to go to another teacher. And it's interesting because at that time, she used to practice with me for the first year that I was studying with the next teachers. And at the time, they said, she told me it was just because, and she was coming to the lessons. And at the time she told me it's because she wanted to learn more teaching techniques. And I think she made some kind of deal with herself that she wouldn't tell me this thing until I was like 40. So as soon as I turned 40, she called me and she told me, Yeah, so actually, they didn't want you at all because you were young and they didn't think you were going to be responsible. So I told them I would guarantee that you would work and you'd learn things, and that's actually why I went to your lessons every week.
Oh my gosh. How did you get into composing? I know you were a classically trained violinist, and then what was it about composing that attracted you?
Well, I fell in love with music as a young child. I think sound was always the thing that drew me the most. I have all these sonic memories. And then I started taking music lessons actually quite late. And I was just enraptured by the fact that I could make sound with other people and that I could feel the vibrations going through me. And I was quite conservatively classically trained. But then on the other end of that, I was listening to pop music and a lot of electronic music, and those sounds didn't really seem to merge together until I discovered 20th century music. I was at the Bowdoin Summer Music Festival when I was in high school, and I met a bunch of composers, and they had a contemporary music program there, and I was just enamored. And I was like, oh my gosh, you can make these sounds on these instruments that sound like the other sounds that I like. So it seemed like a really great middle ground. And then I took music theory, which sort of dispelled the disbelief that I had that you were allowed to write music. And I was like, oh, this is how I can write down everything I've been hearing. And that was a really empowering move for me. And but I went to university for engineering. I have a degree from MIT in ocean engineering, but they have an amazing music department there with incredible composers that I got to work with. I got to work with John Harpison, Evan Ziporin, and Carol Macon. And Todd Mackover. And sort of during this time, I had my eyes open to what it would be like to be a contemporary composer and also what it would be like to use computer and electronic music in my craft. And so this was the place where everything I was learning academically and in engineering, you know, physics and acoustics and coding was coming together with music practice and coming together with these different sounds and the notion of like interactivity and human and machine and sound. Like it was all this mixing pot where everything was permitted and I could just decide which tools to use when.
Wow, that's so cool. So was there a moment within that period that you're like, I definitely want to go the composing route rather than the engineering route, or?
Yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
wasn't really. I was in love with music when I was in high school, and I was recording an audition tape with my accompanist in Nyack, New York, and she looked at me and she was like, "You have it bad." I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you're infected. Once you're infected, it's never gonna leave you, this music thing." She says, "It's gonna be a hard life." I was like, oh gosh, like I didn't understand like what she meant, but then I started understanding because I was trying to pursue something else. I thought, okay, like engineering, it's creative, it's making, but it wasn't enough for me. I also didn't want to be in a profession where I had the potential to hurt humans. I mean, I was studying ocean engineering, but like you build a boat and something goes wrong, and so I didn't want my life to be about that. And I was in love. I had, a love affair with sound. And it's when I started studying with Kirill Macon, and I was really enraptured by his presence as a human and his approach to sound. And watching, sort of as a student, looking at his life and thinking to myself, like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And I remember going to his office and telling him I wanted to be a composer. And he was like, I don't know, like, this is maybe not such a great idea. He's like, we'll see. And I was studying with him in just composition lessons for about a year, and then I wrote the string quartet. And at the end of the string quartet reading, he was like, "Okay, I think it's possible." And that gave me so much hope. Like it was like the best compliment I had ever had in my entire life. And he's been a life mentor to me ever since. And then I've had so many other fantastic mentors along the way. So I think that those, like all of those have been breakthrough moments. But it was my senior year in university when I said to myself, okay, I think that this is what I want to do. And I was like, okay, so I can like try it out for a few years. And if it doesn't work out, then I can always go back to this other thing. But then once you get into it, you know, you fall in deep.
So what do you love the most about composing?
Well, for me, I love the creativity of making, but I love making with and for other humans. And I think it's become more clear in the last 4 or 5 years, but it's becoming the most clear right now when we're prevented from doing this. And it's a very collaborative act as well. Like I'm constantly calling up my musician friends and like singing something into the phone and asking them like, oh, like when I was writing my piece for the New York Phil, I wanted to have this, oh no, this was for the American Brass Quintet. I wanted to have this like trumpet lick. So there was going like, and I was like, well, how do you do that with one pitch? And so I sent a voice message to the trumpet player in Ensemble Echappé, and I was like, "Hey, so how do you do this?" And he was like, "Oh, this is how you do it." And he sent like back a demo, and
Nice.
this kind of like dialogue with my musician friends is really important. And when I was writing the piece for the New York Phil, which was premiered in February, I was petrified because I was just scared. Like that was the orchestra that I knew of as a child, and I go to Lincoln Center, and I never thought I would be allowed to write for them. Like never in my wildest dreams. And so it was both such a privilege, but I was stunned. I didn't know how to start to begin. So I decided that I would, instead of it being the New York Phil, I'd take all of my favorite and closest musician friends and put them as the principal players in this imaginary orchestra and then write their personalities into the parts. And so for me, composing is composing for people I love, and their craft and their musicianship and like how they hold themselves and how they phrase. And so it's a collaborative joy. I mean, I've been very lucky in the last few years. I've had the privilege of writing for my most amazing musician friends. I'm going to be writing a concerto for Jennifer Koh with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and I'm thrilled to pieces to do this. And it's it's like there's an energy to writing for someone who, it's a great opportunity. Like, of course, I want to write a concerto for the Philadelphia Orchestra, and of course I want to write a concerto for Jennifer Koh, but like I get to be friends with her too, so like I want to make her this like thing that she's gonna love. We get to write each other these postcards, and I get to write these love letters that I send to people to read, and it's like the most beautiful thing in the world.
I think the biggest thing that I learned is never to be afraid of failure. So that was a huge thing. And so I'm not afraid of that. I think in general, like it sucks, of course, when you do, but I'm not afraid of it. It doesn't stop me from doing things, right? So I think that might be the start of it. And then kind of overlapping that, I went to the Marlborough Music what is it called? Yeah, the Marlborough Festival. I'm sorry, it's the quarantine brain.
It's okay, yeah, just COVID. Yeah, it's the water too. And
yeah, so I went to Marlborough Music Festival and I met Felix Gallimere there. Actually, he was the one who told me to go I met him earlier. And so he had worked with Berg and Webern and Schoenberg and had played for Ravel. So I think that kind of started, and he knew so much. At that point in time, people were playing Berg, Webern and Schoenberg very clinically, actually. And it was so fascinating because he said that was exactly the opposite of what they wanted. And it gave one an understanding of the importance of knowing composers and working with them. And yeah, so I guess it started there because I went to the Curtis Institute of Music. I went through a pretty rigorous um, kind of Germanic Austrian School of Music, and we obsess over, what does that carat mean in Mozart? What does that, is that a grace note? Is it supposed to be a 16th grace note, or is it like 32nd grace note? So you're constantly kind of experimenting without knowing. But that process I love because it's like they have to become part of your DNA. I have this thing for Schumann because I love his, um, like he sometimes does like the craziest stuff. It's like he's like super excited about this one thing and he's like, triple clarinets! And so, but he does it in such a way that I find so wonderful because there's like this kind of passion behind it, and there's a kind of vulnerability and in his music, and yeah. So in any case, I'm also completely obsessed with Schumann, and I have been for a very long time.
So Nina, do you feel like you found your identity and your voice as a composer, and was there like a moment that happened?
I think I was in conflict for a lot of trying to find a place where I fit in. But it was a big conflict for me, and I was trying to find a place of union where all of these things could mix together. And in the last few years, especially as I've started to do more interdisciplinary projects and even installation work, I realized that as an artist, I'm constantly asking myself the question of like, what do I want to say now and why? And then what are the appropriate tools that I can use to say that? And sometimes they're just an orchestra, and sometimes they're speakers hanging on wires with eucalyptus leaves, and two of my friends in a room, like hitting weird springs and metal objects. And sometimes they're computers processing sounds, and sometimes it's a string quartet or a string trio. So I like the fact that I have a facility and a knowledge, and I want to keep on expanding the tools that I'm using. Like I started writing my own text for a lot of the vocal music that I'm writing, which is an exercise in fragility. So I try to think about like what do I not know how to do, or what am I scared of? Because I think in the places of fear are where the gems can be found, and so I try to go into those places so that I can have a wider palette from which to express myself and a deeper language.
So how have you like just personally grown as a result of your composing?
Well, I think it's I try to listen as much as possible, and I think being a listener is really important. We can have lots of ideas, and as a composer, like yes, I have ideas, but I won't grow unless I listen to other conversations, and conversations that are perhaps contrary to the ones that or the stances that I take. And in listening, one learns and can expand point of view. So that's been a really big lesson for me. And what's great as an artist is you're never gonna figure it out. You're always reaching and learning more and more and more. And so I also try to like learn lots of things that have nothing to do with composition craft right away. I study coding, and I'm reading about architecture now because I'm really fascinated in spaces and how they work. But any kind of other thinking that I take, I can map that in different ways to my own practice, and it expands sort of the solutions and the possibilities that I have and viewpoints of the world.
Back to Jennifer. So you have like 100 million projects going on. Could you tell us about some of them, and what inspired you to begin these projects? Because part of the reason I started Martinis with Maestros was because of Alone Together. I just thought it was such an amazing idea. So could you just tell us a little bit?
I thought it was really important uh, to help financially, and I also know that in general, my community that I'm a part of, and this includes Nina and many of her colleagues. And I know that they care, right? This is a community that really cares about each other, and we support each other and we help each other. And if there was anything I learned from my teacher, Jamie Laredo, he is one of the most wonderful human beings in the world. He just is one of the most generous, and you can hear it in his music making. Actually, like making music with him is amazing because there's because actually like we're different players. I mean, I did this whole 2x4 project because it's like this evolution between teacher to student, and they were all double concerti. But he was the kind of teacher, and he's the kind of musician, and that gives you all the space to be yourself. The only reason I'm here is because of other people and mentors. It's interesting to see how far the ripple goes, right? So even when we're talking about Alone Together, we're talking about any other project, but you also talk about, like this man, Bronislaw Huberman, saved my teacher's life, right? And then Felix came here and he had so many students. I can't imagine that there's definitely every single orchestra probably in the world. There are several people that studied with Felix Gallimere. And, but so that impact from that decision that Huberman made, right?
Mm.
And then for Felix, the impact he made on me to keep faith and to keep persevering, and no matter what obstacle and what people said to me, and then that those acts of generosity, I learned that that's the most beautiful thing in your life. And then it was just about trying to bring our community together. I want to be able to look back at this time and know that I did something to help other people.
And both of you have spoken, I don't know, Nina, if you've spoken about it today, but I heard about it in one of your other interviews. You've spoken a lot about your memories, and Nina, you used the word meta memories. So that seems very important to both of you.
The idea of memory has always been magical to me because in our minds it's actually constantly evolving and changing. So my memory of 10 years ago has actually been shaped by every experience that I've had since then.
Well, I've always been really scared of forgetting. And I don't know what that fear comes from, but I have a fear of forgetting. So when I was a kid, I developed this method where if I was in what I deemed to be an important moment emotionally, usually something that I thought would be profound later, I would take these personal snapshots where I would put myself in the space and try to memorize every detail in the space, every character, exactly how they sound, what was the smell, where was the wind coming from, where is the light, how is it moving, what time of day, so that I could revisit these places in a sort of immersive three-dimensional world. And I think it was fighting the idea of the fact that when we revisit a memory, we rewrite it. So I wanted to get all of these details so right so that I couldn't do that thing, like, like when you're in a dream and you're like, well, this is not really reality because that thing shouldn't be there. That person wouldn't be in this environment. I was so scared that I would do that to myself. And then I think one of the saving graces was when I learned probably several skills, like how to write things down, how to draw. I used to draw a lot as a kid, and then when I finally got a method of recording audio, I had an MP3 recorder, mini disc recorder was my first recording device, and I would start taking field recordings of things, and then when I got my cell phone or digital camera, I would snapshot. So I wanted to like sort of hold these vestiges of all of these moments together. So I'm constantly documenting, but it's documenting out of fear of forgetting, and my composing is very much this as well. I try to, it's not obvious, I don't think, in my work, but like whatever I'm working on engages with the things that I'm thinking about and the sounds I hear and at that time, so I can go back and I can tell you what concerned me depending on which piece I was working on.
Wow.
And then a lot of my pieces, I started doing this thing where I'd write memories of pieces. So instead of like direct one-to-one transcription or orchestration, it's kind of like playing with the idea of the fuzzy trope that when we revisit a memory, sometimes we sweeten some details, leave things out. Uh, and I just think it's all very poignant because we've chosen to work in music, which is a time-based medium. As soon as we hear something, it's a memory, it's gone, we forget it. Uh, and so we're always trying to like we can capture sound, but we capture a performance is just one sort of infinitesimal moment in time, and then it evaporates. And depending on like what you ate that day, what you're stressed out about, like where you're sitting, where you are in the acoustic, everyone's experience of the same thing is so different, and that's so beautiful. Yeah, I think this is maybe maybe I really want to be able to time travel. That's what this is all about. And I think music is the closest I can get to that.
Wow. Where would you, do you have like a specific time you want to go to or just,
Well, I really want to pause time, but I really don't want to pause it right now. Like right now,
Fast forward.
I'd really like to go to like October, even like late January.
Because I was surrounded by so many gifted people in school, and but I learned that talent can be very cheap, and if you don't put the work in, you will never evolve. And I think,
Hmm.
and I feel like if we can, I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Jenny said. You have to put the work in, and I want to expand upon that and say that, and it has to come from a place of sincerity and honesty. I think there are a lot of people who want to do something for the wrong reasons, for ego, for recognition, and those are motivators. They can be, but they're not honest reasons to make work. And as Jenny was saying earlier, so many people help us along the way, and then we have to give thanks by giving back. Like that is the most beautiful part of our ecosystem is that we have our blood families, but then we have these musical families, and they're very rich and they're full of this reciprocity, and that comes from a point of honesty. So yes, you must, you have to have some talent, but you have to work hard. You have to bleed for it, and it has to come from a real place. When I was in elementary school, they came up with this idea that we were going to listen to Mozart while we took exams because it was going to make us smarter. And like I couldn't deal because like as soon as I listened to like the Mozart was playing, I wasn't concentrating on my exam, and it was horrible. So I had to like, excuse myself from that. I really didn't like that. Uh,
you might have been an outlier there though. The other kids might not have been.
yeah, well, I was thinking about like the form, and I'm like, oh, who's playing next? I'm like, oh yeah, I know. And the other, so like there was that. So like the music is supposed to make you smarter by passive consumption, and also the classical music is relaxing. Like I hate that. Like there's nothing that has such an emotional spectrum where we can feel everything that you have felt in your entire life, and then things that you haven't even like fathomed to experience exist in our repertoire of concert music. Like it is the most tumultuous and crazy and beautiful spectrum of like all of feeling, and beauty is in the grotesque as well, and we have to remember that. I think the sort of the beauty and the solace and the tumultuous nature of our repertoire of classical music, which is a living art, is going to perhaps be more important than ever before.